Hi, my name's Ian Wallace. I call myself the Messed Up Counsellor, which is quite an intriguing name. And the podcast you're about to see is one of many, and we've been doing about a year now. So you can look back and see all the things we've talked about with guests and on my own over the process. A lot of the information I use in the podcast initially came from the first book I wrote in 2011. Why do we do that? What do we do about it? And that came out and was the basis of all my learning, understanding at that time, which is going back a few years now. And that process of understanding how the world works for people, how we can alter, change, and adapt it, was kind of what it was there to do with the initial stages. I've made that now an audiobook as well, so it's available on Amazon as an audio file that you can check out and you can download to your heart's content, and hopefully that will be helpful. In the podcasts, we're trying to look at all sorts of things about human interactions, human dynamics, the world, and how we might understand it more or change it more. So it gives you lots of ideas and tools in order to think about and look at different ways of being or dealing with things. And hopefully that brings people together and makes people more able to connect and communicate. Lots of topics. If you ever want to connect to me, just obviously drop me a comment on the podcast and I shall try as much as possible to reply. And if you've got any ideas of things that we might want to use on the podcasts, then please let me know. My name's Ian Wallace. Thanks for looking and thanks for listening. Hi. Today, what I'd like to look at is something which came up in the counselling room this week, which was a question from a client. And we were talking and discussing about feeling or being in control. And it was quite an interesting conversation. I thought, might as well run it past with the podcast as well, because I think it's got a wider aspect of interest. Because when we were discussing it, my kind of question to that person was, well, are we ever truly in control? Can we ever be in control? And they were kind of like trying to work out that with me in the room. So the conversation kind of went through a process of looking at what is control. How do we define control? And I kind of worked out this process with him about as soon as we interact with another human being in some way, shape or form, then we must lose control, because the other person will have a view, an idea, a thought process, an action, a behaviour that we are not in control of. So it's really interesting that we strive to be in control sometimes. And certainly with people with anxiety and those kind of situations and OCD, it's trying to, in some sense, be in charge or in control of the world, which creates the anxiety because the world will never be controlled. So as soon as we interact with another human being, we lose, in my view, that process of control. And that was a very interesting conversation to start, because they believed they were in control of their world. But the more they strived to be in control of their world, the less they were in control, it seemed. Because the act of striving to be in control with other people or other situations outside of us, we can control our world. I can control me now. I can say, okay, this is what I am, this is who I am, this is what I'm going to do, this is what's going to happen. But as soon as we engage with somebody else or something else, then that other aspect will have some element of input. And their process, their thoughts, their ideas, their behaviours, whatever it is that they're bringing to that conversation or that connection will make it so that we're not in control. So I'm speaking to you today in this podcast, and we think we're in control of this studio. We think we're in control of the lights, the camera, the sound technician at the back, Sam. We are in control. But what happens if somebody presses the alarm for the fire? we would have to stop. We'd have to get out. We would have to leave this in control environment. What happens if I do something with the microphone and Sam's trying to control the microphone? Because I'm inputting into that, then I've got input, and by very nature of that, then Sam is no longer in control. So it's a really interesting process of trying to strive for something that we can't achieve. And I wonder how many times you think about this. I wonder how many times you kind of contemplate the idea of the more you try to be in control, the less control you have. Because the very nature of trying to be in control would force a process. So say, for example, I'm catching a bus. Now, sat on a bus goes on a journey, times are usually dictated, but then if there's traffic lights, if there's hold-ups, even the bus driver is no longer in control. So the process of striving to be in control could frustrate me on the bus. I could shout at the bus driver and say, why didn't you get going? Why didn't you get on with it? I need to be there by another 10 minutes, whatever. And that process would engage with a different aspect of conversation with me and that bus driver. So the very nature of me trying to force control, I need to be there in 10 minutes, would be the very thing that would actually probably engage with even more time spent and making me more late. So in this process of thinking, believing that we're in control, that can't be achieved, then how we work that in our worlds and our lives, how do we free ourselves up in order for us not to want to be in control or have to be in control? So there's a philosophy of in the now is a contemplation that we use, or I use within the counselling. So the only aspect of control I can have in my world when I interact with other people is this moment, this second, this millisecond. As soon as I go into a future process, I can't be in control of it. So when we look at processes of meditation, for example, we're trying to bring ourselves into that moment, into the now, into that freeze point process that focuses in on just that moment. So when we're using processes around ideas of trying to get a sense that you're the person in your world, in your life, so looking at ideas around focusing in on a leaf, for instance, mindfulness, focusing in on a drawing, a colouring in, focusing in on that specific point, that specific time frame. So when we're doing that, we're trying to release ourselves from all that pressure, all that stress, all that worry, concentration about what might happen next, where we're going to be, what's going to happen when we get to wherever we're going, what's happening tomorrow, what's happening with the people around us. All those ideas, all those thoughts make it harder for us to be able to fully immerse ourselves in the now, in the moment. So it's not an easy process, this, to contemplate, to understand, or to even think about, because we just get on with our worlds, we get on with our lives. We're constantly interacting with other people, either directly, through a camera, like I'm doing with you, through an email, through some kind of media process. And as soon as we engage with that other person, they have an agenda. They have something they want to get from that connection. And whatever that is means that we no longer are dictating it. We can't. It's impossible. So when you're trying to be in control, when you're trying to have that element of your world being the way you want it to be, you have to kind of let it go sometimes with an understanding that you'll never be in control in engaging with another person or another thing. So do you strive, do you push for that control, which could then lead to frustration, resentment, all those kind of processes that won't be helpful? Or just allow to be in that moment, allow to work with whatever happens next and be flexible with that, be able to be okay with that. As you're moving forward with that, and you can find that space, that time, that way of being, then in my world, when these things have happened to me, when I've sat with it, when I've just been in the now, in the moment, I found it a very freeing experience. Something that, I don't know, it was weird in some senses. It felt I was more alive, intensely alive. So when you're looking at the tree, you're looking at the leaf, you're looking at whatever it is that you're focusing in on, everything becomes more vivid. The colours become more vivid, in a sense. I don't know if that's true, but it seems true. The hearing, the bird song, the kind of things around you that's around that wood, that tree, become more intense, more able to focus in on. It's as though the moment becomes everything. Now that might sound a bit weird and a bit out there, and I'm sure it is, but it's an interesting one to try. So if you're doing mindfulness, meditation, all these kind of things that help us to look inside, help us to engage more fully with ourselves and the moment and the now, then that process might give you different ideas, different views on what is helpful, what is not helpful. Do you chase to be in control, try and make the bus get there on time? Or do you relax and sit on the bus and just think, okay. I constantly say to people when we're doing things around anxiety and those kind of things, don't focus on the destination. Don't focus on what you want to get, where you want to be. Focus in on the journey. And I give an example. I say from here, Leeds, to London, about 2.5 hours. So you can go direct route, M1 from Leeds, straight into London. Or you could take a detour. You could go off the M1. So you still can get to your destination, London, but you could pick up an awful lot more information, a lot more experiences, pleasure, by having that journey and focusing on the journey. You're still going to get where you want to go, but you don't have to get there in that time frame. People will say to me when they come into the counselling room, sorry, I'm late. I said, well, you can never be late. And they look at me as though I'm a bit mad sometimes. I said, well, you can only ever be where you are. So you're not late. You arrived at the time you had to arrive by. So do I stress you out by saying you're late and I'm looking at my watch and saying, where have you been? Or do I just allow it and say, okay, you had a different journey to what you expected? If I do the second, the latter, then the person in front of me will relax more, and be more feeling of not being judged, not being told off, not being given any negative processes, being accepted, valued. So all those things that I allow that process not to engage with that pressure of you're late, but I get that person to relax in it's okay, it's fine. We can all do that. It's life. Why do we need to be there at that minute, at that moment? And that work will hopefully be a lot more easier to connect to build that therapeutic bond, as we call it, and to work with them. So if your world is about trying to be in control, trying to be in charge, then just have a look and see what it gives you. Does it help you? Does it give you that process of feeling safe and secure? Or if you allow it to be freer, more flexible, not to be too worried or too bothered about that, see what that gives you. See the difference and how you work that difference and which feels better for you. I know for me, it feels better if I don't pressurise myself, if I don't think I'm wrong, if I don't think I'm late, if I don't think I'm bad. It's much easier if I can accept that things are going to happen. Life is going to happen. Things are going to change what we planned. That's unfortunate, but that's life. If we work with that change, if we work with the process, the journey, instead of the destination, then that might give you lots more input, a lot more different ideas, different processes, different experiences maybe. And that then can make it a lot easier for you to feel comfortable, feel safe, feel secure, feel happier, feel at one with yourself, so to speak. Try these things out. Now, I'm not saying you're going to experience it the same way I am. You won't. But it'll be your experience. And however that is, see whether you feel more comfortable in that letting go, being more flexible, being freer, or that rigid I must. When you're looking at that, when you're feeling these things, when you're trying these things out, see which fits with you better, which feels more comfortable, which you feel happier with. You know? If anybody says to me, I have to, then that really means that they're not in control. If they say I want to, that's a much better place. So do I have to be there at that time? Would put pressure on us, because then we might get it wrong. We might not be there at that time. Do I want to? Feels a lot more easier, a lot more freer. Because then if it doesn't happen, then it doesn't happen. And I enjoy the journey. And I don't worry too much about the destination. Hopefully that was interesting. And if you have any comments, ideas or processes that you would like me to have a look at or explore, then please do so. My name's Ian Wallace. I'm the Messed Up Counsellor. Thanks very much. Hi, thanks for listening to the podcast, and hopefully it made sense and was interesting for you. Please subscribe, like and share. With the podcasts, you never know who will be helped by the things we talk about, things we share. We don't normally tell people our problems, but by sharing it and helping other people to understand things. The book Insecurity, It's All About Me, is also available now through Amazon, and it gives you an understanding of what drives insecurity, how insecurity works within our human dynamics, and how you can get a much more secure connection with people. It gives you lots of ideas and thoughts, which is really good. So thanks for listening. Subscribe, like, share, hit the button, and if you've got any comments, please give me them, and I'll do my best to answer them. Thanks very much. Take care.